Welcome to the channel. There's just something about bicycles, that just the shape of them, that make them great watercolor subjects to paint. This is a photo from a pioneer village in on the east coast in Nova Scotia. I think it's in Pubnico. Anyways, it'll be a fun one. The drawing really shows you what you need to do here. You need to preserve the light colors and the darks, and that'll really bring the light out. It's already got light just from this drawing, and it's a more elaborate drawing than normally I would do. So the first thing I'm going to do is start up here in this background. I don't want it to take over either, but like I said, it's very important to preserve the light and take our time with this. And there's no drawing back here, but I do want to get the impression of that building that's in here underneath this roof line there. So we've got some brown, we're going to go into here like that, and this is just basically our first color that we're going to put in here. So being careful, certain things you got to be careful with and certain things you don't. And you know, with the bicycle you're going to have to get, you know, the tires right, and some things can be left loose, and I'm just dropping some more color into here to make it interesting. And then some things you have to really paint and make sure that the lines are crisp. Like this is a roof line back here, which is, you got to get that roof line right. Even though it's in the background, we're going to get that correct back here. And I'm mixing colors on the paper here. I got blues, I got oranges, and we want to make sure we keep our darks dark in there, but not too dark because it is the background. So I blued it off a little bit, and then we've got above this roof line there's some green, so I'm going to go ahead, and that's about, there's another roof line coming in down here. I'm not going to paint it just because it's in kind of a bad spot there, but I will run this down a little bit further here. We'll make it like there's a bigger roof line in here, and I'm going to leave that puddle there. This is developing nicely, and so that's important to leave that. And then we're going to have some greens, working into greens in here. Now I'm using nice thick color. I'm not going to worry about the fence that's in the front here, and I'm going to run this down right here. And it goes all the way down into here like that. And notice I didn't touch that bead in there quite yet. Come in here under this roof line. Come across like that. And I'm going to go above it without touching it. Because the moment I touch it, you know what's going to happen. It's going to flow it right into it. So we're going to just put in some little variation into here, maybe a little bit of a splatter like that, and get a little lighter above here, just like it is there, just from the sun. I prepared my palettes. I've got old pigment on these palette mixing trays, and I'm just leaving in there. I'm just going to blend that right in here, just like that. And so I've left this dark, or this light spot here above this roof line, like that. And I've got a bit of a bead going right here. It's all good. And I want to get darker as we go down into this area here, like just like the photo. And also change the color a little bit here, just like that. Excuse me. So these into here, we're just going to blend that darks from the roofs into this area here now, just like that there. And what I can do is get right under here now, and I can put my dark shadow into here. Just like that, and just let it develop. I've gone a little bit over the edge here, but it's probably best just to leave it just like it is there. And then I want to get really dark down into these shadow areas into here. So I've got some neutral gray. that I put in there just like that. Again, we want to preserve our lights and darks, and that's really what's going to make this painting pop. The light's just going to pop in this painting here. Yeah, a little Quinacridone Gold. So we got a bright area in here, so I'm going to put it in here right now. Yeah, nice and wet here. And bring that down right into here like that. And this wash into here like this here, and quickly we're getting right into these darks down here. And see, we got the impression of the light in there, we've got our darks in there. This is working quite nicely. And then that's drying. It's still too wet. I do want to splash a little bit of clean water on that, so I'm going to keep an eye on it there. So under this building here, we've got some darks here. I don't know if I want to get into that quite yet, because I'm going to have to cut around some of these lights in here. I can cut in here like that. That's a lot of pigment, so I will do this here. Something you've got to be real careful with here now. Into it just like that. And with this pigment here, I'm just going to dry my brush off, and I'm going to pick it up. And then I'm going to just start over here. I'm going to use it under here. This is really dark area there. Go ahead, being careful, cutting around parts of this bike. Down just like that into there. Now I realize it goes darker, it goes below the hub into here, and that's something that we can look at later if that doesn't work with, you know, this, how high I have it here. I'm just going to leave it there just like that. Now what this does here, because this is wet, it's buying us some time here, and I got to get right into these grasses pretty soon here. Yeah, I'll splash some of this blue into here just to cool that off a little bit. And then under this building here, we've got this, it goes right into these shadows. I've got some neutral gray. You say I want these darks dark in here, so start painting these shadows right away into here. And it's really going to pop even more. So I've got that going underneath here. I've just got to be careful. I'm going to bring that there just like that. And run the bottom of that building right into there just like that. Then I've got some of this red color here. I'm just going to put it in there just for interest and seam it in there a little bit, just so it looks like a little bit of something. And I've still got this pigment here. I'm going to make use of it. Yeah, I'm going to come across this bike pedal into here like that a little bit. And I am going to bring it down just a little bit more and going around that bike pedal again and into here like this. And change the color of this into this green. Into the green, into there, like that. And just let that loosely come down. Nice loose painting into this area. I've got a little bit of Quinacridone Gold. Put that into there. More water. We want this nice and wet. More water. More water. I'm just throwing water at it, keeping it nice and loose. And these colors may look pretty intense to begin with here, but they're really not. You know, by the time they dry off, they're going to dry a lot lighter. Cover our area into there. Get some more of these nice greens into here. And switch brushes, so we've got a little bit more pigment in this brush here. It's a little softer brush. And we're going to paint this into here. I'm going to preserve, there's a rim, the bicycle rim right there. And I'm thinking about this negative painting where this bicycle wheel, especially important is going to be this front bicycle wheel in here, like that. Now let's get bright here. I got some of this green gold here and I've got it really wet going. I'm going to go right into the bottom of this wheel just like that there. Some green oxide I'm going to blend in with it here a little bit and go right underneath here. Right into this area, into here. So I'm cutting around, really the rim is bright here, so I'm just going to leave that in there, and I'm going to let that just run down into that other part there. And you can run different colors into here, you know, you can splash some blues and get yourself some contrast going in there. And it's all going to mix on the paper. And I get some nice purples going into here. I'm just going to splash some of them in. The purple can be really strong. Drag it in there just like that. And get our first wash down in here. I've got some nice color here. Just going to drop that right in there just like that. And up here, we was talking about this clean water. And it's time that we put some in there. I'm just going to look at this a little bit. There, just like that. So then we have our bottom areas here just developing nicely. I'm going to get in here and put some, you know, see this area here? I'm just going to paint that in here. The little darker areas. Dry off my brush a little bit. I want thicker pigment. And right up into here like that. Right into this bike wheel. And maybe a little line into here. If you put a dark line, then it'll give you that variation in there. Even with some neutral gray. And you just let it do its thing. And also if you splatter it, it'll also give you those little, it'll bring out the little highlights in the grass there, just like that. So this is quickly coming together. The bicycle is actually not going to take very long. You just have to be accurate in doing those bicycles there. Parts of this painting, if you're painting loose, your subject matter, parts of what you really want people to focus on have to be perspectively correct, and the drawing has to be good and crisp and clean lines, because if it was all kind of an abstract or impressionistic painting, then your eye wouldn't really pick up on things as well. Like the front wheel, you got to make that really good, and then the back, if that was blurry and impressionistic, you would still get, people would still figure out, hey, it's a bike, you know, and they would notice, you know, they would notice different parts of it and identify with them. So this is coming together well here. I can go in here when the timing is right. You can watch my video on timing. It's really important when to do things, when the moisture content is right in your paper. I want this really dark in here, so I'm gonna go ahead and go even darker, and it's too wet to do that post there right now, but it's perfect to do this, just this dark in here, and all I've got is neutral gray. I'm gonna go even darker underneath here, like that there, and maybe do a little bit of, I'm just checking the tip of my brush here to see how wet it is. Do a little bit of negative painting. I'm just gonna drop some pigment in here in different spots, and don't forget to do like in here too, and this will have to be dark into this area under there, just like that. You're looking under shadow underneath that building there, and then when this is right, you can go ahead and pull it down into your grasses here, and it'll give you, you don't have to do a lot of it, you just have to do enough. And the little voice will tell you when it's enough, and that's probably just about enough there. I like that color, and just pulled it down into there. And then the same goes into here. Now if we did, this is pretty dry and this is wet, so I can't really go up like that unless I pick up more pigment, but I can go this way. And it'll still give us the same impression of the grasses. See, if you go up, I've just got pigment from the black that or the gray that I'm pulling down here, so it's really not doing a whole lot. But if you go this way, that looks just like a leaf right there. It'll give you that impression there. Yeah, and then keep going down into here. That's a little bit square, that's a little spot here. And we'll leave it just like that. In the background, I'm just gonna put a hint of those posts in there, and that's about it. All right, so I'm gonna let this dry a little bit more here, and then we'll start on the wall in behind, and then lastly, we'll do the bike. All right, so this is dried sufficiently so I can get into doing the background, this wall here, and it's really not gonna be too difficult. We've got kind of a grayish color going on there, so we'll just mix that up and come down into there. We're going to need a lot of this pigment because we want it really wet, coming down into here, and a little bit of dry brushing. Nice soft brush helps with dry brushing tremendously. Mix up a little bit more color. Now we do have an area here that has this kind of yellowy, orangey shingle coming out here. I'm too wet. I'm seeing I'm too dry. And I'm just going to put just a little hint of that, just like that. Maybe a little bit more, and just soften that up, just like that. Soften it up, not the right word. Just give it a little bit of detail. Yeah, we'll get nice and wet going into here. I'm probably not going to paint all these shingles in here. I'm just dropping some nice clean water into here. But I don't want this wall to be boring, so we're going to have a look and see what we can do with it here. I'm going to want some water. Nice and wet. I just dropped some more water, picked up more water with the brush here. I'm going to come down like this. And we don't want to kill all our light, so just want to keep it wet just like that. Throw a little more water at it just to keep it loose. And we've got, some more variations in here from water stains. We'll get that going. Pick that up there just like that. And you notice I've got it blending in here. And that's going to pool there where where it's a little bit drier below it there. So I'm going to fill in some of these here. Just like that. And we can let that dry a little bit there now. What you can also do is just give it some impressions of these shingles if you want. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to put some few little kind of shingle marks in here. You can go across and, you know, put some lines in here like that, but they have to be, you know, they have to be right. So probably a rigger would be best for doing that with, but I'll just decide if that's what it wants, if that's what we want to do here. I'm just going to soften that a little and take this right to the edge, just like that there. This is pretty bright, the tonal values compared there. It's not, this is brighter than that right now. I want to keep the edge bright. And I'm just seeing if I want to go a little bit darker. Maybe I do right here. And get some of this. I've got some cobalt teal blue in here. I'm just going to run that down. And I can see that blue. I hit a blue into here now. It's a lot easier to see these colors playing there than it is here when you're dealing with a photograph. A little bit gray, bluer here. I'm just going to put some of this in here, just like that. Run that all the way down. Just like that there. Remember, that's all going to dry lighter than what it is here now, so it's looking pretty good. I'm just standing back and having a look at this. I do want to run that lighter area here and around this bite down here like that. I want to save that. That'll be darker anyways later, but we can figure out our tonal values later. But we still got the contrast. We still preserved the lights and the darks here, which is really going to make this painting. And looking good. I think I want to maybe do a little bit more down here, maybe a little bit darker color. So I'm going to go ahead and wet it. It's important, this is rough paper, and it's important to let it develop on the paper. And what will happen is you'll get the little, you know, the granulation it'll follow the highs and lows of the paper there. That give it a nice little framing contrast into there. Just like that there. Maybe a little, do the same with a little bit of Quinacridone burnt orange in this corner here. There we go. And that'll blend in nicely. We tie that in. Sometimes I just tie colors in here. Just so that kind of evens things out and pulls your eye into there. Just like that. And maybe even reinforce this dark even more here. With almost pure pigment here in this of neutral gray into this area into here. And then our posts, we're going to frame this nicely. So looking good. Okay, so I'll let this dry a little bit more and we'll keep going. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is, normally I would do these posts here and this fence, but because I'm going to be working on this bike, I'll get my hand in there, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to start right on doing the bike here, and I think I'm going to want this darker later. You can see I've let this dry. It's got really good granulation coming down here and even here, and down into these colors just because I let it dry. And look at the texture here. I don't know if you can see that just from the rough paper. And the colors just pooling in the right spots, and it looks really good. So we're going to go ahead and start on this bike here, and being careful and taking our time is going to be the trick here with this bike. Now I've got some pretty bright colors. I've got iridescent electric blue, and this bike is blue, and I wanted some nice contrast. I want it to glow, so that's what I'm going to use. So I've got it in this other palette over here just off camera, and we got some blue will come down here. This one you want to paint and be careful with it. So, and it's got a bit of a highlight on this side here, so I'm going to preserve that just by dropping the color in here and like that. I can always close that in later a little bit more if need be, and maybe even with some darks. I'm preserving my white here. I don't like to use masking fluid, and I'd rather preserve the whites or use a little gouache at the end. And the gouache I use is water soluble, obviously, and it behaves a lot like thick watercolor, just thick, like you're using thick pigment. So up here we've got the chrome of the handle. Up here we've got a kind of a faded white color, so it's darker underneath here. It's got kind of a highlight on this fender, so I'm gonna just paint that highlight on the fender very carefully, making sure I keep the curve of this fender going here, and the fork of the bike is underneath here, or over top I should say, and I get a little bit more pigment, and almost like painting a pinstripe here. And being careful. There, we got it. Okay, and then so the next one, we've got more bike parts to get done here. This is quite dark over here. I'm going to go ahead and lay this down in the straight line. A little more pigment. I'm using a rigger brush here, so it's quite small, so it doesn't hold a lot of pigment. It does for its size, but it's like that here. But I'm making sure I don't run out when I'm painting these lines in here. You can see this iridescent electric blue. It's just a wonderful color. It's just sparkling here, and you still don't want to be too dry. I'm using this pigment pretty much with color, like right out of the tube, like consistency, so it covers really well. Got the shaft going down into here. It's on this side here. I'll go ahead and paint the rest of that in there. I can use a little bit larger rigger if I want to, but I want to start with this. That way I can take my time with it and make sure I get pigment where I want pigment, and it's not going to be where I don't want it. So we got a down tube going on here. Actually didn't draw that down tube in, but it's there. You don't have to draw everything in, you just have to paint it in later. You can draw with a brush also. And this is quite dark in here. I'm going to go ahead and fill that in, and I can add some darks later on here. Rough paper and thick pigment, it's easy to do dry brushing also. So you'll see me working an area, and it's just making sure that I've got pigment coverage into the little low spots of the paper there. So that comes in just like that there, and I'll go in here like that. Yeah, into here, it goes right up into here with some darks. Just like that there. So we're looking, where else do we have blues? We can fill this in here. Normally I've got these quicker brush strokes I use, but with bikes you gotta get it right and take your time with it. even a bit of a highlight there. And if you paint less of it in, it's better than paint too much and painting over the lines. Got this here like that. So with these forks, there's a lot of light color there too, and this is quite dark going to here, into there like that. I'm gonna paint this one in here, just like that, quick, into there. And with the lower part of this fork here, it's lighter color, so I'm just gonna either just use, I'm just gonna try clean water here and see if I can spread this pigment into a very light shade of it here where the sun is shining on it. And that seemed to work well. And the same over here. I'm just gonna get some thin pigment here, a lot of water, and come over top here like that on the other part of that fender. Yeah, I'm just gonna add a little bit of water to everything here, and it'll soften the look of everything. And here we've got that other fender here. It's quite dark here. I'm going to start down here and I'm going to work my way up with it here and here like that, and a little highlight on top there like that. Just drop some pigment in there, some water. And it's got a little bit of a highlight here, like that. And the rest of it is quite dark, so it's something that I can do afterwards, or I can lay it in here a little bit. Whoops. Gotta be careful with it. So that went a little further than I wanted, but I'm just gonna put some water in it here and just let it spread out. Okay, good so far. And we've got the seat is kind of a darker color here. I'm going to start with a neutral gray. I'm using a really fine rigger, and I've got really good control over some of these spots with it, so I'm just going to continue with it. And there's a little bright spot there. And I don't want to go too crazy with the detail on this. Blend it into there like that and just drop some little bit more pigment in here. And there's kind of springs and things under here, so I'm just going to give the indication of them like that there. And the bottom part is darker into here. The more time you take with this, the better it's going to look, because it is bike parts. You gotta get most of them right, and some of them can be washy, but you need to get some of them right, like I was talking about before. And this is kind of silvery blue down here. I'm actually gonna I got some interesting purpley color here. I'm just gonna go ahead and drop that in. I've got that in my palette. And being careful again here, I'm just gonna drop that in like the bike rim, under the bike rim, and it's pooled there nicely. I'm just gonna leave that. Into kind of a red color into here. Just make it interesting. And while I leave my highlights in there. The bike pedal is there. It's something that you can kind of paint last anyway, so. I find these paintings are really calming. You know, you can take your time and drop in color here and there. And you keep them loose, and you can achieve some great results. There's our pedal, a little bit darker here on this side, and there. And you see me do this before from watching my videos. You know how to pick up pigment where you don't want it, and that'll be the end of the pedal right there. A quick and easy way to do it. Thanks to all the new subscribers. If you haven't subscribed already, please welcome and subscribe. There's a new thanks button on the bottom of the screen. That's a way to leave they call it super thanks. Yeah, it's a way to donate to the channel and to leave a special thank you message, and I appreciate that. Thanks very much for the people that have done that already, and thank you if you're gonna leave a donation to the channel. It's all going to a good cause, to the studio equipment, and gonna help out. So here's we're doing bicycle tires here now. They're dark, you know, I can see it really dark under this fender here, under this side of the fender, so I'm going to go ahead and paint that in here like that. And I'm kind of, normally I'd be right in front of this painting, but I'm painting at an angle, so I'm getting a little glare off of my own light here. But I think I can see well enough to do this here. And we'll give this a little bit broader look, a little wider, like that. And then I'll bring it down behind this tire here where it's darker too. Like I said, some of this has to be really carefully done, and other parts can be a lot looser. This tire is probably the most important thing to get right here, and I don't trace drawings. I draw them by hand, and I do use an eraser and get it and make sure it looks right. If it doesn't look right, fix it before you start painting. And you can actually also, you know, I hear, you know, some people out there, and sometimes I'll paint without a preliminary drawing. But that being said, what I'll do is I'll actually paint with, or I'll draw it with a brush, just lightly. And then once it's wet with the brush, you could just drop more pigment in there, and away you go. So I'm just going to define this rim really well in one little spot here, just like that. And that's about it right there. There, so, and then down into here, this part of the tire is dark also. And remember at the beginning of the video, I was talking about what's going to make this painting successful and with a lot of light. And that's preserving your whites and also putting your darks in. Without darks, you're not going to have any light. And you've already seen the light in this painting right from the beginning, right from just looking at this pencil drawing, the darks and the light, and that's just what we try to preserve. And it really works if you just keep the same values like that there. Alright, so I'm going to stand back and I'm going to have a look at this and let this dry a little bit and continue on. Okay, so it's dried a little bit here, so I don't have to be too careful about sticking my hand in it. And the next thing I'm going to do are these handlebars here. And all you got to look at the photograph at the beginning if you rewind it, or take a screenshot of it, and then the handlebars contrast against the wall here quite a bit. So you can pretty much start with any color that you like, but it's going to be fairly dark here. So once I've got moisture where I want it, I'm talking about drawing on the paper, like drawing right on your painting instead of a preliminary drawing, and that's something you can do here. And you'll notice I'm going to wet this whole handlebar ever so lightly. It's not dark at all, it's just light. I'm just getting it wet everywhere, and you can probably guess what I'm going to do after I get the water where I want it. If you watch the video on moisture content, you'll certainly understand what's this method here. And timing. Timing is so important. Watch the one on timing if you haven't watched that yet. have a look at it before you even start this painting if you give this one a try. Timing is so important. When to do what you want it to do, and without timing, it'll just get frustrating. Because if you're working in too wet a pigment, it's going to give you a hard time. Or too dry. It really depends what you want it to do. Now what I'm going to do, I've got some dark neutral gray on this brush, and this is really wet. What's it going to do? You're right, it's going to go down to the bottom here and just sit right at the bottom where I want it, because I've got my table at an angle. It'll also crawl up the page. I'm just studying the photograph a little bit to see how this chromy handlebar is doing. And the handlebar grips are black. This one here actually separated from the end. It poked through the end, so the silver of the handlebar is sticking through there. I had that happen on one of my old bikes many years ago. And then along the top here, it's dark. So I'm just going to put a little highlight, and it's dry where I'm painting this little dark. It's more of a detail than highlight, so there, just like that. And then I can go even darker with thicker pigment, and I can go right in here where it's kind of in shadow a little bit. And it's unavoidable. You got to be careful with what you're doing here. Like that. And this has got a little bit of detail. It's a little bit wet to be doing that with right now. And then the handlebar part goes like that. And little shiny chromy bits here. And now's the time you can also put in some of this. You can dry brush some of the darks into the rest of your bike here. Like that. And what you do is just get some water, and you can just blend that in just nicely in there like that. Liking that. Okay, now so we've got some darks over in the front of this. Down tube, just like that. So I wet it, and I'm dropping pigment in. It's a little quicker to do. And the bottom sides of these, I'm not even looking at the paint at the photograph now. I don't need to. Just gotta. I know that it's dark underneath, and I can run these even more down there. So. And then with this here, you can just wet this bike seat. And you can see the puddle of water I've got at the top here, like that. And I'm going to run this puddle of water down the bottom, just like that. And I'm going to leave it like that for a minute, and we're going to see what happens to it. And I'll go a little bit darker here on this, just on this edge here. Create a little more contrast, but I'm not going to fill it all in. I'm just going to do that. Just like that. Quite liking what this is doing here. I'm just going to run some more down below here to get it a little darker. There, looks good. And then behind, next thing I see is this fender. Needs a little bit of definition under here. Do that like that. And that to there. Preserve our highlight. Go a little bit darker here. And this is the wheel, the front wheel especially. I want to make sure I get this exactly right. So, just steady my hand a little bit here. And it's okay if you muck that up a little bit, and then you can just pick it up with a paper towel, just by just pressing on it and dabbing over it with a paper towel. And it'd be good. So there's a fender support piece right here, so I'm just going to paint that in like that. Just studying my painting at the same time here. And this is kind of chromy blue over here. It wants to be purple, I think, so I'm just going to make this little hub down here blue. Put a little bit down in here, just a suggestion of it back there too. Some darks. This is just kind of gray over here, but I'm just going to go like where the tire is. I'm just going to go fill that in with a little bit of purple color. Just lightly, it's mostly water while I'm preserving that rim, the shiny rim there. Alright, so coming along nicely here, I just gotta work a little bit more on this bite to get these darks where I want them, and I think I'll leave all that just like that for now, and I'm going to work on the shadow because it's something that I really haven't done yet. And what you can do is go over, you can either leave it like this just with your pencil drawing, there's nothing wrong with that, or you can go over it with water. Just a little bit of purpley hue, just wet, just so I can see where I've got water. I actually can see where I got water from this, just the sheen on the paper here from this angle. And get it all wet, and I'm going to do the same thing as I did when I did those handlebars. Except for it'll be a little bit easier because it'll all be the same color. Now what color is a shadow? Well, there can be purples in it, and there can be grays, there can be reds, there can be whatever colors is picked up. By whatever is reflecting your shadow. That's what color a shadow is, and it's usually a darker shade of the same color that's behind. So I'm going to go ahead and wet all this area here and think about how can we make this interesting. And that's all shadow there into here. Drop more water. Here, just like that. There, and there's a little bit there. I'm being careful. This is like I say, a nice small rigger brush, so I'm being careful with it. But also, I've got to add moisture quite regularly with it because it doesn't hold a lot of pigment. So there, I'll just drop that in there with the angle of my table. It's just gonna pick that up. I just got a kind of a purpley, shadowy color here, and just let that fill in where it goes, where it wants to go, where I put that clean water. Yeah, just let it come down. Okay, bring that down just like that there. Looking good there. Okay, so I can go, the handlebars are dry here, so I can go a little darker underneath. Like that there, and they're kind of darker in the shade right there. These grips are dark. Just using my neutral gray, I'm going to fill the grips in. I thought that brush was going to flick right into my wall here, but I was ready for it. And you can just work that down just like that. You'll just feel what brush strokes it needs to get what you want done there. And you can feel this when I'm dragging it sideways. I don't know if you can see that. It loads itself up like that, so I'm ready for it to spring right into the next part there. And if that's not something you want, you got to be on your toes. And I'm going to get into here. Like that. And then if you want to darken your shadows, you can kind of have a look at it like that. You can just drop some more neutral gray in your already wet pigment and watch what it does. If you want it a little bit darker, I'm just going to drop some in right here. I do want that darker, so away we go. And just let it flow down naturally into this area, into here. Give it some variation. I can see that pigment is pooled there nicely, so I've got to be careful with it, and I won't stick my finger in it. And here with this fender going up here, and it's basically negative painting is what we're doing right here, like that. A little shadow from that. I'll put a little shadow in here from that bar. Yeah, like that there. A little bit darker there. I'm going to run that shadow color into the hub right there. Yeah, looking good. Okay, so now I've got my hand out of the way. To paint this fence over here. So again, I'm drawing on the paper here, basically is what I'm doing, because this color here will dry to almost nothing. And I'm going to come across like that. Just be careful with the edge of that. Like that. And I'm just wetting my paper, and that's all I'm doing here, is pretty much, except for I can see where I've got pigment here. And it's going to let me run some other colors into it, and I don't want that too prominent, so I've got some kind of neat colors here I'm just going to drop in here. And let it flow on the paper, let it kind of disappear into that, just like that. Now if you look at the photo, I'm just going to get you the photo here again. If you look at the photo, it's really, really dark, and it's really dark down here, and it's what brings the light of this wall up well as well. So I'm going to just get some shadow violet here, and just drop it in to that fence post right there. And you can use tree techniques, you know, with salt and different things if you want some texture on this fence, but it's really not about this fence. So, and if your fence is getting too tight, just throw some water in there like that. Just kind of makes it nice and loose. And I've got some my pan with blue. I've got some blue in here. I'm not sure what that is, but I'm just going to go ahead and throw some of that in there. Looks like a ultramarine or a verdant or blue or something like that. So there we've got, so I've softened the look of that fence quite a bit. And if things are too, sharp and focused in the background, it's just gonna draw your eye to it a little bit too much. There. So we've got a rough edge here at the bottom. So I'm just gonna look at this some more and maybe work on, a little bit of darks in there. But I think that's about it. Except for this, here I'm just gonna pick up a little bit of this shadow color that's pooling there. I'm actually going to lighten it up a little bit more. One quick thing I wanted to show you also is I use this artist gouache made by M. Graham and Company, and it dilutes itself with water really well and behaves a lot like just regular watercolor. And what I do is I just highlight these spokes here. Just have a look at, if you have a look at the picture, and just put an indication of these spokes. You don't have to paint them all in, but just a little bit here and there, and it helps quite a bit with the detail in your painting, obviously. And you can highlight different areas, little spots on the handlebars, and just a little bit here and there. But you never want to, you don't really want to overdo it. But it will add some nice detail to your painting. Just like that. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Just a few finishing touches left while this or after this dries, and have a look at it. But I quite like the way it turned out. We'll see you next time. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.